Hi guys, welcome to this video where we're going to talk a little bit about decks for fall. What I will say is this video is intended to be a place where you can kind of come and distract yourself. That's what it is for me right now, because I just feel so heavy-hearted, and if I'm not doing something, then it's like, I don't know, I'm still in the grieving process, guys, and maybe we can kind of share this space together. So with that being said, let's just get into it. We're going to start with tarot cards, I think. I do want to mention this as kind of an honorable mention, and I wouldn't even call it that because I find this is kind of an all around the year deck for me. It's probably my most used. That is the Everyday Witch Tarot. I know her name is Deborah Blake. That's who it is. I was like, I don't have the box because it's really, really big, and it does come with a pretty sizable book, and I wish I had that with me right now. It's in my storage unit currently. However, I also have the Everyday Witch Oracle, and while the cards are bigger, I love this series, if you will, or this theme so much that I don't really care. The one thing I will say, the only critique that I have for this is that with the back of the deck art, it is, I think, pretty easy to decipher if the card is going to be a reversal or not. And I understand that some people don't mind that, or perhaps you are not someone who applies reversals in your practice, which is legitimate and valid. But for those of you who do, I think so. It's not a deal breaker. It's more of a pet peeve. But I'm not complaining about it. I love the finish. The one thing I will say, the glare is not that bad. There are some decks where it's just annoying. But I really love the feel of these cards. You guys know, if you've seen my tarot videos, that this is, that I'm a matte girly. But this deck just makes me so happy. I resonate so much with the imagery. I like that the image takes up the whole space. I mean, if you can make a border work, then you can make a border work. I think it speaks a lot that this is probably one of my most used decks. I would say that another Llewellyn deck that I really, really am curious about is the Mermaids deck. I am in between as to whether or not I'm going to get that. I also suggested in my Secret Santa, I always suggest tarot decks or oracle decks. This might hurt tarot, and even if I don't get it on my Secret Santa, I'm considering that, as well as the Fifth Spirit Tarot. This is one of my favorite illustrations in the deck. This death card to me just hits differently. I also want to do a series just about different major arcana that I like. This is one of my favorite Empress cards as well. I love the energy of this, with her behind the fruit tree, or with the fruit trees behind her, and she's standing. I like it a lot. There isn't a lot of diversity in this deck. There is some. And I do think that this is a relatively beginner-friendly deck, although it doesn't follow the Rider-Waite imagery verbatim, the themes are most definitely applicable. For example, we have the Five of Wands here, which is Saturn and Leo, and this is difficulty expressing oneself. And so you see these witches kind of arguing, and while this is happening, we have this cauldron that is boiling over. And then we have the cats. I love the inclusion of the cats and the animals in general within this deck. But this is to say that if we're not on the same page, or if we can't come to a compromise, the end result is going to be affected. This is also Leo being a fixed sign, and I just really appreciate this deck. I just have words. If you want a full flip through and a full review and an exploration of the book itself, feel free. I do think that this deck has been around for a long time, so I totally understand considering there's probably a million other tarot reviews for this particular deck. I wanted to see, I think I'm gonna go with this one. I'll go with this one first. Okay, so we have the Cozy Witch Tarot. This is so obvious. Now, if you don't know Amanda Lovelace, she was really well known for poetry first. And I've read some. I have some on my shelf that I have to read still. But I remember my first breakup, my first serious relationship breakup, her poetry was so cathartic for me. And so I think that there's a sprinkle of bias that I have in suggesting this deck. I know that it's not everyone's cup of tea. It's a softer deck, and it's just, I love the artwork. This is Amanda Lovelace artwork by Janaina Medeiros, and I didn't believe I said the illustrator of I'm looking at the Oracle box and it says Elisabeth Alba, and I'm hoping that that's the same artist that did the tarot. If it's not, I'll amend that on the screen. I love the backs, and it's done in a way where, again, you can't tell if it's a reversal or not, so I appreciate it. I love a matte. I will say the cardstock, it's pretty, the card is bigger compared to, for example, the Everyday Witch, and the Everyday Witch is it's a lot thinner. So while this is matte, it's also thicker cardstock. It still has a pretty nice flip back, boop, 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 boomerang effect. But yeah, I love the messages on here though. For example, this is the Devil card in the traditional Rider-Waite. And here we have toxic witches. Be cautious of those who take more than they give. And I also think this explains that when we are in situations in which we feel emotional pain and hurt, our perception of reality changes. And sometimes, it's a lot. It's a lot. We feel that in our body, in our minds, in our souls, like it's painful. And so, we get dragged down almost by these it's almost like emotional vampire. That's what I get. I'm not going to go through the whole deck. We have Justice, and I really like the small odes to the traditional deck. We have the Scales, we have the Sword. Stick to your truth and everything will turn out just fine. I do like the little phrases, the sentences. They're not too long, not too dragged out, not too clunky, but it gives you an idea, kind of something to base your interpretation on if you do get lost in the sauce, or if you're a beginner and you're not super familiar with all the meanings just yet, then that's something. I also really like the Death card here. This is this is not 13. This is 10. This is the Wheel of Fortune, and it's renamed Good Luck Charm. If nothing seems to be going your way, cast a spell. And I think this Wheel of Fortune talks a lot about our relationship with spirit and our agency. That, we don't necessarily have to wait for this change to come. Like, it's all about the actions that you take leading up. This is the Five of Wands. A good coven lets every witch have a say. So not letting one person dominate, but rather holding space for everyone to express themselves authentically. Not taking away from someone else's self-expression. And I think that if you feel uncomfortable, or if you're feeling, a dissonance in your emotions, that might be something that you need to self-reflect upon. The Six of Cups, this is Sun in Scorpio, and so I love this this imagery. Give yourself the compassion you were never given, and I think this speaks to childhood healing and healing our inner child, and being able to advocate for ourselves, being able to accept and appreciate it's like the joint resources. Like, you are supporting a small business, and that small business can then, I want to say like fertilize more. I'm kind of drawing a blank here. So this deck is just really it hits a soft spot, and you have like the cozy fall vibes. This is the Five of Pentacles. I know that's more winter, but it's just everything. And obviously, what do you think of when you see these little coffee mugs? These coffee cups, you think PSL. And if you don't, no, I'm just kidding. Maybe if you don't drink coffee and you do tea. But anyways, I really like this. You can find this kind of all over. This deck is sold at Target. It is the same publisher as her poetry. And again, so $24.99, you're not going to be paying that. It's like, I think at Target, it's like $16 or $17. And I know Amazon's price for this deck isn't that, it's not that much either. Like, it's not $24.99. So that's the Cozy Witch, the Everyday Witch. I wish I had another one with Witch, but another tarot deck that I am going to share is an Insight Editions, and unfortunately this deck kind of fell flat for me. It did, and but I am such a big fan that I'm kind of holding on to it until I can find maybe a better one. I don't know. This is the Lord of the Rings. It's a tarot and a guide. I don't think I have the guide in here because it makes me angry looking at it. If you don't know, it's one of those big map things. The Beetlejuice deck did have that similar concept, and I was honestly surprised because I was hoping that they learned from the deck reviews. When I watched Lord of the Rings for the first time, I believe it was in 2021. It might have been 2020. And when I was watching it, I was like noticing archetypes in tarot and stuff. So this was actually before this deck kind of came into play. I think this deck was published in 2023, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if it says on the back of the box or not. And while I love the major arcana, I think they did a wonderful job. It's the pip for me. It's the minor arcana. When you have this was so much bigger than Hocus Pocus. I'm sorry, this was you have so much to pull from. You could have pulled from The Hobbit. You could have pulled from, like, look at this. Like, this is embarrassing. This is embarrassing. You had so long to work on this. I don't mind this one. The aces are good. And I don't mean to be so harsh on this deck so soon. However, I'm kind of I'm just really disappointed and hurt as a fan of the franchise, I guess. Not, it's like Lord of the Rings is a whole cultural thing, and you can try and say, okay, well, these 3 rings represent 3 different dimensions, and when they're all working together, they're united. This is a joke, especially for beginners. I feel I might like just take out the court cards, the major arcana, and the aces. I've thought about doing this and just using it as such, and then having another deck to use the minor arcana with. You know what? I actually think I could do that with the well, no, because then, I could pair this, I suppose, with the psychic tarot, because there are no court cards, and then, but it's like, again, you'd have to do it separate shuffle, so I don't know if it's worth it, guys. But come on, like, who thought that this was a good idea? Who? You really have to know the traditional Rider-Waite meanings before you can even use this deck. And I get it. I have some decks that are pippish. But if you're going with Lord of the Rings, you got to do it right or don't do it at all. Excuse me. I'm gonna, I think, show maybe one more deck, and I do actually have a full flip through, so if you are curious, and I honestly don't know why I'm choosing this deck, but it called to me while I was it's almost, I would say this deck is kind of an all around. It is a fandom based deck, but I went and saw the Avatar, like the symphony, and like it was like the musical thing at the Fisher, and it was so inspiring that I kind of pulled this guy out. It's a mat. This is all like hand done. You have to order it from Japan, so it does take a minute for shipping, and you have to also consider the cost. But I love just everything about this, and you can hear me gush about it in the full what's it called? Deck flip through that I have, and I'll link it in the cards below. There are a couple things that I have in terms of critique. I can kind of get through this, but especially with the court cards, I think, like the Four of Cups, this is such a beautiful, I like it because it's just subtle, but you know what it is. You know that that's Uncle Iroh's son, and like, you know, kind of that staying in the past or letting the past control you. But see, this was like, for example, this is the Queen of Swords. So I kind of get it, because the flame kind of shows this directness, and then this shows your values. Hold on, I have to reset my camera. So yeah, but I mean, I think in some regard, and that's a creative choice. This is her deck, and so I'm just saying what I think. But other than that, I think this is just my favorite. See, the King of Wands is this, but then the Queen of Swords, and so I don't like the incongruence. That kind of bothers me a little bit. But again, I think that this is the most well illustrated Avatar deck. I do know that there are others, but I also have seen so many that have been published and now are out of print, and so there's not a lot of Avatar decks that you can get. If I see any more, you know, maybe we'll take a chance. But yeah, so I think that I'm gonna call it for today, though. Emotionally, I just want to be more present, and so if you want to see the Oracle deck version of my fall-ish collection, give us, I don't know, let me know. But I hope you're well, and hang in there. Take it one day at a time. Ciao for now, I guess.